faculty members, parents, and my dear young students. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, to see this beautiful university and an outstanding group of students. I have to also share something very personal in this regard. For me, this is the first graduation ceremony that I'm attending because I missed the two of mine. Thank you, Shoolini, for making this happen to me. But in times like this, one is always gripped by nostalgia. And when I was listening to the wonderful sort of talk by each of the students, I sort of went back in time, and it's over 3 decades back, and I was just trying to sort of figure out what is it that was running in one's mind. And I must tell you that things have really changed and changed for the better. Because during our times, we had very, very moderate expectations. So when we would start, we were obviously quite unsure, but in terms of our aspirations, they were moderate. And today, when I look at young students and see the aspirations, see the swagger in their walk, see the confidence in every step that they take, I feel absolutely delighted because, in a way, this represents the future of our great nation. So, absolutely delighted. I was just also trying to figure out, that this wonderful change that India has been through. And it's good to sort of just see what is it that makes India different. And, to just compare with other nations which have grown in the last, say, 70 or 80 years, United States, Japan, China, Korea, these are nations which have Germany. If you look at United States, the Germany and Japan, a lot of their development was led by industrial growth. It was industry which was at the center of the whole growth, and it catapulted them from, to one of the amongst the most developed nations. Countries like Korea, countries like China followed suit, and they became the countries that they are. See, India's change when it started to happen was somewhat different because it was led by the services growth. And, why services were very important was that India had certain, I would say not shortcomings, but it was a little behind in terms of certain facilities like infrastructure and others. And in a way, services provided that beautiful platform. And I would say that it is the services which has catapulted India to its, position of glory. Having been a part of ICICI, I have quietly sort of, in moments like this, you sort of go back in time and just try to see how the journey of this institution has moved with the growth and the opportunities that have happened in a great country. So ICICI, we started in the year 1955 as a development financial institution with the basic objective of serving industrial projects, and this was something which was done. There were 2 other institutions, namely IDBI and IFCI. So in a way, the institutions did play a very, very important role in the setting up of industries in the initial stages. In 73, ICICI started the investment banking when the first signs of capital markets started to show up in the ecosystem. But one of the things which is lesser known, and I'm sharing, some of you would know that the founding shareholders for HDFC, which is amongst the stellar financial institutions of our country, were basically the Aga Khan Trust and ICICI. So these were the 2 founding shareholders, and that's the role which is. And then the first venture fund in India, credit rating information services. So that's how I would say ICICI was changing. But the core activity of ICICI was the B2B project financing. It was in the 90s, mid-90s that ICICI sort of thought of actually catering to what was then truly a latent demand. And the latent demand was that in India, most of the banking was a B2B banking. Banking was done basically for industry and SME. But it was felt that, Indians need housing, Indian needs cars, Indian needs other sort of things, credit cards, probably earlier than what they get. And to that extent, there was, I would say, a discussion, and I must tell you how things evolved. So one of the things that ICICI said is, or thought about, was that if you are able to convert EMI equivalent to what one pays for a normal house that we lease, you could possibly change the whole landscape. And this is how the 20-year loan got created. And I must say that this B2C transformation, which happened, and then it was, I would say, a lot of other institutions joined, and I think this was truly a phase where, in a manner of speaking, I can say emancipation of India's middle class happened, because ownership, the whole growth pattern, and to the extent that when there were downswings in the late 90s, it was the B2C contribution, it was the retail contribution, a part of the larger services sector which, kept India growing at growth rates which were always very, very attractive in the larger international context. If you sort of just juxtapose these two, the whole change for people who were in ICICI was very, very interesting. And I must tell you, and since you are starting your career, till about 15 or 18 years back, the only banking or the only financial services that we knew were B2B. Most of the careers, one has been a part of insurance for 16 years, but not even there when one started one's career. So an opportunity in, say, telecom, an opportunity in life insurance, an opportunity in general insurance, opportunity in mutual fund, they didn't exist. Technology, they didn't exist. So what I want to just leave with you is that, you're full of enthusiasm. The only thing is that you ought not to have any limitations in terms of your free flight. You should not have any constraints in your own mind that you want to do finance, you want to do marketing, you want to do industry A, industry B, this role, that role, because the opportunities in the next couple of years are going to be phenomenal. And at the same time, the ecosystem would be also very, very, positively and dynamically disruptive. This is something which we'll see. So the only thing which I tell young India or students like you, or when I see outstanding people like you, is that the only thing which can limit your free flight is things like cynicism, things like arrogance, or things where you say that I don't want to do it, or this is the way things happen. I think this is a luxury which young India will not have, because young India will face a dynamic India. Young India will face an India which is going to be disruptive. The product life cycles will be much shorter. So your ability to be focused in terms of catching the next big thing, that is something which will perhaps be the most important thing in your, I would say, the career and the wonderful future that awaits you. I was so happy to see each one of the young students here pay a tribute to their teachers, to their parents, and indeed I must tell you that your first, phase of your life, these have truly been your mentors. They have guided you, they have coached you, they have, as I said, taken you through all your difficult phases. But, and in a way, I would say parental life is protected. The life of a student also is a very, very proportional life, in a sense that, when one was giving this, the medal for the best outgoing student, you would see that you work hard, you do well, you get good grades, you are able to get the output. The future in the real world which you are entering is no different. I would say that hard work, sincerity, being committed are perhaps the most important traits. But one of the things that happens is that the results may not be proportional, or the results may not follow a timeline that you work hard, you get the results immediately. So what one has seen is that in the real or the corporate world, what happens is that many a times the hard work of today may not give you results immediately. It may take 1, 2, 3 years. So I think that's the phase where you have to be tough. You have to keep pegging on and saying that, no, I'm not going to, give up, because it's like 2, 3 years at times is required to get the, results of the hard work. You could also encounter, I would say, situations, again, because normally teachers and parents are always provide you what I call the coverage, or like a firewall from anything which is difficult. I'm not saying the world outside is evil or difficult, but the world outside is a lot more unpredictable. So you could have situations of some of your own leaders who may not fully understand you, who may not understand your good qualities, and you may find, situations which are tough. That again, I can tell you, is something which is always a passing phase, because all good institutions have this remarkable ability to purge out things which are not good for them. So that tenacity also is a very, very important aspect that you must keep with you. I can sort of, you're also capable. I don't have very many additional things to tell you, except to sort of say that the only thing which you ought never have is what I call arrogance, or you should never give up humility. And humility is not about being servile or being subservient. Humility is about always knowing that there is another viewpoint, that there is always a room for improvement, and there is never ever that we know enough. That's the only trait. So it's basically purity, passion, and sincerity, without allowing this aspect of what I should say, any level of complacency or arrogance. If this is what you maintain, I can only tell you that there is a glorious future for you, because I was speaking with Atul on the way up when I was coming, that probably the next 30 to 35 years offer one of the most dynamic opportunities. It's very difficult to be a clairvoyant to say what are the dynamic opportunities, but I always believe that just as the phase of 90s and the 2000s was emancipation of India's middle class, the next phase of India's growth would be centered around inclusion. Because India, which has about, say, 150 crore people, there would still be about 80 to 90 crore people who are outside what I call the inclusion system. And I think it's very, very important for a country or a society to get them into the mainstream. And I really believe that the next level of growth, the next level of opportunity, the next level of disruption that will happen in the ecosystem will actually have inclusion at its center stage. So the careers, the opportunities, the work profiles that you will get will probably happen around that. It's again, I'm not a clairvoyant, but just trying to look into the past and trying to predict the future. And when I sort of look at a future opportunity, I always say that a future opportunity is always when there is something with a latent demand or an unfulfilled promise. If there is, I would say, an arbitrage of cost or an arbitrage of what I call efficiency. These are things which offer the biggest opportunities. So the next couple of decades are going to be glorious. You will be a part of that glorious journey. So I'm sure that you will reach the pinnacle. You will have glorious achievements ahead of you. And I can only request you to enjoy every day of your life. And the journey of life is never based on milestones. I mean, it is these milestones. Many a times, I see the first year students, at times children get worried about their summer placement, then they get worried about the placement. Of course, it's very good to get perfect things, but I can tell you, the journey of life is never over till your eyes close. So success and failure parameters only get decided at the end of your life. So you have to keep trying hard and keep working hard and being positive. So I wish you the very best. I wish this institution the very best. I believe this institution has a fantastic future, great teachers, outstanding faculty, and above all, it's like a resort. I mean, I was, when I was saying how enviable, I was feeling so, it is, as I said, 5 years in this glorious environment. This is something you can never get anywhere else in the world. So, all the best. Wishing this institution a very, very glorious, great future, and wishing you, all of you, the very best in all spheres of life. So God bless you.